All right, listeners, I feel like this is a somewhat unusual thing to want to bring up, but something unusual and quite tragic happened the day that we are recording for a future episode. Something that on the surface seems pretty unrelated to things that we do, but behind the scenes has a ton of personal significance, which is today, Wednesday, July 29th, the day that we're recording this. It was made publicly known that an Irish singer-songwriter by the name of Glen Hansard passed away in a motorcycle accident. He was only 56 years old. He was still a very young man. He left behind a wife and a son. Glen Hansard was somebody that, to me, personally, was about as meaningful a public figure that has ever existed in my life.
Yeah.
And that's because he wasn't just a public figure. He was somebody that I actually grew to know, and we had several conversations over the years. And I just want to share briefly the way that this came about and also some of the connection my relationship with him has to this podcast. So when I was in college, sophomore year, I broke my pinky on my fretting hand. We're musicians here. I was a guitar player.
It was your left hand.
Exactly. Yes, this was my fretting hand. So it was a meaningful break, and it was a bad break. And I couldn't play guitar for a while, but it was a blessing in disguise, as these things usually are, because I felt like I came away from trying to be like the most badass fast guitar player to somebody that was really opening my horizons up for different types of artists. I had previously heard Glen Hansard's band, The Frames, and I had seen them live at Lollapalooza the year before, but I hadn't put together yet that he was the guy in the movie Once.
Yeah.
And Once was Glen Hansard's enormous big break. He had been a touring, working, busking musician for 20 plus years before. And when I saw that movie that summer, it was as close to a religious experience as one can have when you watch a movie and you're a musician. I think a lot of people who are musicians and movie lovers feel that way about that film. And it was really meaningful. And I learned all the songs and really dug into it. And so naturally, when they went on tour, I went to see the Swell Season, which is the group that kind of formed in the aftermath of the film. And I had the good fortune of getting to speak to Glen and his band. And I shared the story about how I busted up my hand, but that it was just made for this perfect opportunity for me to slow down a little bit and start to appreciate something different in music. And for whatever reason, I cannot tell you why. These are the strange things in life that you really can't quantify. But he just took to what I had said.
Yeah.
And he wanted to hear more. Then he wanted to know what I was doing. And he's like, film school? You're in film school? I'm thinking of going to film school.
Wow.
And so we started talking about film school. And I told their manager who was there at the time, Howard, who I think is still his manager. I had told Howard that I was going to also see them on tour when they passed by in Chicago about a week later. And he said, oh, do you want to bring somebody? Let me know. I was like, okay. And so I brought somebody who was a past guest on this podcast, Anuvalia, to come see this show. Now, we are in this concert, doing the whole thing, having a great time. There's an encore. There's a second encore. And on the second encore, Glen is like, so I met this kid in New York and we had this conversation. He's in film school and he told me that he wants to get really rededicated to music. He said he was going to be here. Is he here? And I was like, yeah, I'm here.
You're like, that's me.
That's me. And so he invited me on stage to play a Bob Dylan song to just close out the night. And it was the closest thing I can say to like a Make-A-Wish moment that I've ever had. It was this like huge moment for a 19-year-old to experience. And the most awesome thing about that is that that was not the end of it. It was really just the beginning. For years after, anytime I saw him, he recognized me. And after about a year or so, he was like, Emilio, how are you doing? And he like remembered my name, which is always just jarring to me and really cool. But he was the most genuine celebrity that I've ever met in my entire life. I've had the pleasure of getting to meet some really cool people. There has never been a Glen Hansard.
Yeah.
He is a one of one. He is somebody who actually cares and actually remembers. And so for years after this Make-A-Wish moment, he was somebody that I kept in contact with, and he kept in contact with me. And he was working on a record here in New York, and there was a bar here in town that he would frequent that I got to know all the people there. Shout out Brendan, shout out Renata, shout out Natalie, all these like wonderful people there. And he was working on his record, and I got to listen to him work on his record. And there was back and forth that he had and that I was a part of. And it was so surreal that an artist that I deeply admired was just letting me be an equal. And this was before I had anything remotely to my name pertaining to music. I was nowhere even close to where I'm at right now. I was literally somebody who was just trying to make ends meet and hope that something would happen musically. And that didn't matter to him. He didn't gain a single thing from whatever he put into me, and I gained everything. And then there was some time where I didn't see him, but the last time I did see him in 2019, it was like no time had passed. It was unreal. He recognized me and came up to me in a bar and was like, "Hey man, how are you doing?"
Wow.
And I was so fortunate that he was able to meet my wife at the time, and that they were able to have an interaction. He even joked about the fact that I was getting married before him. It is crazy for me to think that he is not here, because he really seemed like somebody that was going to live forever. And when you were in his presence, that's how it felt.
Yeah.
It felt like he really cared about people. He cared about the way music connects people, and he did not take that lightly. Earlier today, I was in contact with so many people who were a little bit like me, who were in his orbit, and people who are really hurting right now. And it's just remarkable about how all of us have the same stories about how good of a human he was, and just the immense hole that is left.
Yeah, he just seemed like such a genuine person that touched so many people, either through his music, if you didn't know him directly, or in ways, like you said, with you, that seemed like a lot of people experience similar things, because he was just the type of person that wanted to genuinely connect with people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this really radiated, even for those of us who didn't get to know him personally, that even from that first viewing of Once, which is many years ago now for me, that there's just something really magical about that movie. I didn't have any existing familiarity with him or with John Carney or Markete or Glova before seeing that movie. And I was much younger. I was like 13 when I saw it. I was so taken with it at the time.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
Kind of movie.
And anything that I heard about him in the years after, the same spirit seemed to carry through, whether it's, hearing any of the music he released with the Frames, the Swell season, or just under his own name. And then, starting this podcast and getting, I had known you for some time, Emilio, before we started the podcast, but it wasn't until we started doing this that I learned these stories. And that, there were some points, like past guest friend of the podcast, Michaela Brady, came here, and she is part Irish, and you were starting to hint at the story.
Yeah.
And I was there thinking, you can say who this is about. You should say who this is about.
Right.
And she immediately lit up as soon as you said the name Glen Hansard.
Yeah, it's a really wild thing to have happen to somebody that at such an early age you get the co-signing of your musical hero.
Mm-hmm.
I don't say this lightly. I would not be here in this room talking to you guys. I know this for a fact.
Yeah.
If that hadn't happened to me that day in November of 2007, because it had ripple effects, slowly started to push me in directions where I was meeting people and I was doing this and I was doing that, and suddenly pouring a lot more attention and energy into music felt justified. And then that gave me more credibility and comfort and confidence to actually go and pursue music, not just as something that you perform, but something that you teach. And that's one of the things that unites all of us here, is that we're music teachers. I'm telling you guys, that would not have happened if Glen wasn't such a mensch.
From everything that you've said, I feel so confident that I'm sure that he felt that it was, I'm sure that he enjoyed seeing you grow, like in your life. Like he met you when you were so young and he got to see you like blossom as a musician and a person. And I feel really confident in saying that I'm sure that was very special for him.
And I'll say this ties back to this podcast. You guys know, because I've had conversations with you. Listeners do not know this. Glen was a guy who I wanted desperately to get on this podcast.
Yeah.
Holmes was a huge cinephile.
Yeah.
He loved movies. And so from the very moment that this started to become something and the idea of having guests on felt like it could be a reality, Glen was always somebody that I was like, we got to have him on.
Yeah.
And I knew that it was a bit of a stretch, but I also didn't really feel like it was that big of a stretch because every couple months for years and years, our paths would just cross and it would be like, dude, what's up? How are you doing? How's your family? How's music? Are you doing okay? I could not wait to have him on this podcast. Also for you guys to experience what a cool dude he was.
Mm-hmm.
Not just for being an amazing musician, not just for being a closet cinephile, but for being a wonderful human that really cared about people making art, being creative. I will always feel a little bit sad that we're not going to have an opportunity, a chance to have Glen on to talk about movies.
But I think it's safe to say, based on everything you've described about the impact he had on you, and also what we are saying about how we do things here, that, you know, when you consider all the factors that come together for us to be able to do this, that we wouldn't be doing this podcast if not for Glen Hansard.
Yeah.
I don't want to sound hyperbolic. It would not be happening.
Yeah.
It really wouldn't.
Yeah.
Again, the ripples happened, and there were many other people that took those ripples and turned them into waves. But it really started that night in November in 2007.
Yeah.
So I just want to say, Glen, wherever you are, I love you. The world loves you. The world is going to miss you. And I know your family is going to miss you. And that's for real. His family is going to miss him, but he has left such a mark on this planet, and your music's not going anywhere. We're going to keep playing it. I would not be here in this seat right now if it were not for the generosity of an artist that is no longer with us, but is very much still with us. So rest in peace, Glen Hansard. Thank you for everything that you've done. And yeah, you're going to live on in our hearts.